Amidst growing diplomatic tensions between India and Canada, a viral video has now added fuel to the fire, further igniting the ongoing debate about immigration and healthcare policies. The user, Chad Eros, has claimed that Canadian maternity wards are being flooded by pregnant Indian women who are flying to Canada to give birth and secure Canadian citizenship for their babies. The video has captured a lot of eyeballs and has added another layer to the already heated discourse that is currently surrounding the two nations. Before the discussion on the current situation, let us first, listen in to this video.
My niece just had a baby tonight. Congratulations. My sister became a grandparent before me. You always gotta beat me at everything, don't you? Anyways, the nurses told my niece that the maternity ward is always full of foreign Indian women that fly to Canada to have their baby. You see, Canada doesn't turn anybody away in our healthcare system. So what they do is they show up when they're in labor to a hospital, and the hospital takes them in and helps them deliver the baby. Any complications, anything that they need, they get. And then once they have the baby has Canadian citizenship. And so then they take their baby, fly back to India, and when the baby grows up, they come over to Canada as an adult, as Canadian citizens, because a Canadian is a Canadian, right? And then they sponsor their parents to come over, and all their siblings and whoever else can be sponsored to come over to be with them because they are Canadian citizens. Now, because they don't have Canadian health care, I would assume that they're getting a bill for their birth. But do you think that bill's getting paid? Or do you think they just jump on the plane, fly back to India, and don't pay the bill? Because, what are they going to do? Tackle them at the airport and tell them they can't leave Canada until the bill's paid? I'm sure they'd be more than happy to be stuck in Canada until they pay their bill. But no, I'm willing to bet that they don't. So any hospital administrators or accountants or bookkeepers, what does your accounts receivable look like for births from foreign Indian women right now?
All right, of course, not a very palatable and a nice thing to say concerning that there are issues between these two countries already. And I'm sure every hospital in the world is going to have some sort of a check and balance when it comes to such influx. We'll talk about this nevertheless. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, with us on the program. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, also joins us on the show. Mr. Surinder Singh Lali, international affairs expert, with us on the program as well. Ambassador Mukherjee, ma'am, I'll begin with you. Is this, adding insult to injury? Does this statement qualify for, that particular saying already? Or do you think that because of, the turmoil and the friction and the bitterness between these two nations, the regular Canadian is also getting influenced unnecessarily and making such, unnecessary videos?
I think he's not a regular Canadian. Regular white Canadians are very nice people and they are not racist at all like this. This man has obviously never gone on an aircraft on a long journey. Let me explain, Vineet, what are the rules which all airlines have in the world. Once you are 6 months pregnant, it's very difficult to buy a ticket on an airline for a long journey. Even Air India doesn't give tickets, okay? That's the first issue. He's saying they are coming in just before they're going to go to labor and hopping into a Canadian hospital. That is completely impossible unless they have driven down from the United States, crossed the border into Canada to go into a Canadian hospital. Secondly, he says that he's sure they've not paid their bill. I would like to assure this man that in my experience, in my foreign service career and in India, when you go into a hospital, whether in India or outside, you can't leave the hospital until you pay your bill. When you're getting admission into the hospital, you have to pay an advance, okay? If you don't have healthcare insurance, you have to pay a bigger advance. Once you are ready to leave the hospital, you have to pay your bills and the hospital gives you a slip to say that you've paid the bill and you can leave. So there is no question either of anybody, Canadian or foreigner, just leaving the Canadian hospital in this manner and hopping into an aircraft to get back to India and then waiting for the child to be 21 so that he can come to Canada, secure a highly paid job, which he might because they have excellent educational facilities in India, and then sponsor his parents. So it's so racist that one would think the man is acting. Secondly, he seems to be under the erroneous impression that India is a land of, as they used to say, of elephants and maharajas. We have nothing here. We have no hospitals. We have no health care. We don't know how to look after pregnant women. Every single Indian is getting up at night and dreaming of the huge paradise awaiting him in Vancouver, in Toronto, in Ottawa. This is utter nonsense. I think it doesn't even dignify an answer because it is so plain racist that I doubt if a normal average Canadian, and I know many of them, white Canadians, would accept this kind of language. They would feel ashamed. There is a huge amount of debate in Canada about their healthcare system, which is far inferior to India. Because, for instance, if you have a serious illness, to get an appointment, let's say, with a specialist, you can wait up to 6 to 8 months, which is why a very large number of Canadians, and for that matter, the Dutch too, because the Dutch have a similar free healthcare system for their citizens, they fly down to India, it's called medical tourism, they stay in a hotel near the hospital, they get themselves checked out, they from the best Indian specialist, they buy the medicine, they stay for a month, they fly back, after 6 months they again come back for a checkup. So actually it's the opposite. We get a huge inflow of tourists, they are called medical tourists, it's called medical tourism, from Canada and from Netherlands and from countries that have free healthcare who want to an immediate appointment with a top class specialist in a super specialty hospital like, let's say, Max Saket. They would do anything to do that. There are French citizens who do that. So I think he needs, what we could do is, Vineet, we could club together our savings and offer him a one-way ticket to India. Let him stay here for 6 months. We'll show him India, we'll show him our hospitals, we'll take him to Varanasi so that he can see for himself what India is. What he needs is a free trip. We'll fly him by Air India, we'll fly him to Air India, and if he doesn't want to go back, we'll give him an Indian passport. That's the best way to deal with this man, Vineet.
So, Ms. Peer, how do you see this? I completely agree with Ambassador Mukherjee that it's not only incorrect to call out Indian pregnant women like this, but it's also extremely foolhardy or rather silly to think that somebody would do that, hop across oceans to go to Canada and give birth just for the sake of citizenship. We have a stellar medical tourism already in India, and there are better ways to get Canadian citizenship, and who wants it any which ways now?
Vinny, thank you very much for having me on your show, and I agree with Baswati ma'am. She has put it eloquently. I'll add on where ma'am stopped. The first of the thing, when you look at this man, I think he is racial and he has a preconceived notion, and I doubt he's Canadian or not, but it's that white man's supremacy what is talking about. The first thing I want to tell him, mathematically, look, mathematics is the most accurate science. 2 plus 2 har jagah 4 hota hai. First of all, if I look at the records, last year, only 1% of the births which happened in Canada were of non-Canadian residents. So if your nurses told you the hospital is filled with Indian women, pregnant women coming and jumping here, either she's delusioned, or you have some kind of a dementia. So I think wise would be to get both of these people checked. So it's 1%. Second thing is 3% of the Canadian population is made of immigrants. So how do you know the woman which is there is a Canadian national, is a Canadian passport holder, maybe of Indian origin? And how are you trying to interpret that she hopped into a plane, what Basmati ma'am rightly said, you cannot get a ticket, and she went there and she said, bhai, let me deliver my baby and give me a Canadian passport. It's not so straightforward. It doesn't happen so straightforward, right? So that is the point number 2, which is very important here. Point number 3, which is very important here, is that you seem to live in a la-la land wherein you see people are dying to come there and to get your passport. For what? But kis liye? Fourth point is here, Now, usually, when you go out of India, which you have been numerous times, you have lived out of India. What is the first thing? What is the first thing a Pakistani tells you? Maji Indian hu. What is the first thing a Bangladeshi tells you? Maji Indian hu. So how does this man know they were not his friends from Pakistan and Bangladesh who were there, and he's trying to support them? They are all Indian, because they will. If you even ask them, say I'm very Indian, they will not say Pakistan. They will not say Bangladesh. Fifth thing, how does he know they are not Canadian citizens or PR holders? And let me tell this friend of Canadians and Justin's friend, 20% of the Canadians are born out of Canada, brother. Wake up, smell coffee. 20% of your population is born out of Canada. And this 1% which I told you, and most of them are Canadians who have taken another citizenship. Most of them are non-Canadian residents. There are hardly any foreigners. If you look at the data, there is no data available for so-called foreigner births in Canada. That means it's 0.1, 0.2%, which is negligible. So if 0.1 and 0.2% or 0.3% you think is breaking your medical infrastructure, then you really need to do something about the medical infrastructure. The challenge is that when Canada is being backed by India, they have no other alternate. So they're getting these, side heroes cropped up, and they're trying to create all these kind of funny stories and all. Today the reality is that Indian medicine is best in the world. If you go even to a country like Oman, beyond a fracture, they have to either come to Singapore or come to India. There's a very simple rule. A lot of countries have this rule. Okay, beyond this, I have to go to India. And the way we are handling people, the way we are doing it is at an industrial scale. And with the best medical care at the most affordable prices, with the most experienced doctors in the world today is in India. In the world today is India. We have done the surgeries which no other country has done. And look at our hospitals. Go to any hospital. It is flooded with foreigners. Even if you go to any of the Gurgaon hospitals, for example, Fortis, you will find more Ferengis than Desis. Yaar. Hum minority mein aa jate hain. There are more foreigners there. So if that is true, this all video is a figment of imagination. It is a manifestation of a crooked mind. It is that imperial arrogance or white man supremacy where you want to put down the India by some way or other. Indian women are coming. This is an insult to India, and let me assure this Canadian, if at all he is, there is no way nobody is going to travel here and get your Canadian passport. Bhai, why do we need your Canadian passport for what? You are a country where economy is in shambles. You are a country wherein jihadis have immigrated and they are living on your social security. Most of provinces are getting bankrupt. Law and order is getting tarnished. Your economic growth is 1.2% and falling to, we are going to get into deflation next year or so. Your CPI, that is, the index, if you look at CPI, if you look at a factory index, they are all falling. Your inflation is rising, your repo rate has increased. And you have 95% of the area which is inhabitable. So out of all the beautiful things you have there, why should I leave my country and my future here and try to get good to your country and your future and your passport? When you and me had kids born, we could all afford to buy a ticket to Canada. Did any of us do? Or any of people watching this broadcast did do? We didn't do it. So who on this earth does he know these aliens are coming from? Where on this earth do these nurses know they are all Indian women flooded and they are foreigners, they are not paying the bills? I mean, if you look at the muck which he is trying to raise, the propaganda which he is trying to raise is atrocious. Now what we need to find about this man is he a outdated actor or a rejected actor from the soap operas of Canada? Is he not getting enough work?
Or is he employed by the Khalistanis?
Yeah, वही मैं कह रहा Jagmeet Singh पैसे दे रहा क्या? Is he on Jagmeet Singh's payroll? Who paid him the last money? Where did he get the last paycheck? For that is something which we should look into. Otherwise, these people still live in a Lala's land. They still live in the Alice in Wonderland. And when I look at them, what I get an impression of, in Alice in Wonderland there is this white rabbit who's always looking at the watch and saying, I'm getting late. That is exactly the man. He looks like that. I'm not being racial here. I'm just trying to do a create a similar situation which is more practical and which is more known to a lot of people than this kind of atrocious claims and hyperbola what I has been talking about, Vineet. My God.
Mr. Lali, your thoughts on this video?
Puneet, this is going to be a tough one because while I totally agree with the timing of the video, but I think I'm going to park my point in between what Chad said and what Master Mukherjee and Simranpreet said, because when you go for a treatment, they at best they can ask you for a social security number, and if you don't have that, if you're a tourist, they'll ask you for insurance. But either ways, the treatment cannot be stopped. They have to, and there have been a number of instances when I used to live there. My relatives would come, and once my niece fainted at the Las Vegas casino. So it's not as bad, but it is because a lot of people are not from Gurgaon and the NCR area who go there. A lot of people still go to Canada to get a Canadian passport, especially from the Indian hinterland. And even when I was there, when my younger was born about 17 years ago, my wife was in the family way. I totally agree with Ambassador Mukherjee that they will not allow you to travel, but there are people who manage it. There are people who hide it and manage it. And I have many friends all across the country, even now in India, who are living in India, who simply went there because their kids could get a passport. I mean, look at the way people in Punjab are wanting to get a visa. So if a visa, they're wanting to sell their property. Imagine what they do for a passport. So there is somewhere, a bit lacuna in the middle. It does happen, but I'm going to make a larger point. Is that I think perhaps Chad should understand how the Westerners have colonized this world, because for me it's more than just a lot of Indian or people. Oh, by the way, Vinny, this abuse is a lot more in Scandinavia, especially from Pakistan and other countries, because what they do is they bring their women there and they have children and they send back. So if they get 400 or 600 euros per child, and if you have 7 children, you can do that, your math, and that's kind of money they make. And when you multiply with the weak currency of that nation, it's a lot of money. But my larger point is that somewhere Chad also needs to watch Shashi Tharoor's video on the 5th of July at the Oxford Union speech, where how for the longest time Britain, France and Spain sucked up on these countries and created this divide. I mean, there was a saying by a British gentleman who said that the sun never sets on the British Empire, I think George McCartney. So that ought to give you an idea of the kind of arrogance these guys had, because they ruled. And now, when in any economies the difference in the has and have not will come, obviously people will travel to other countries for better future, or because it's a difference that kind of pulls them in. So somewhere I believe Chad has a point, and somewhere he doesn't have a point, but the timing of the video is very ill-timed. Thank you, Vineet.
Ambassador Mukherjee, do you also think that what Chad has actually enunciated sums up, a lot of things on how, the Canadian government feels about India as well?
I think this man, if at all he is a Canadian, which I very much doubt, because as I said, I have many white Canadian mainstream friends, and they never talk like this. They in fact pride themselves on being multiracial. And this is a really nasty racist video. It sounds either as if the man is an actor, or he's been pulled out of somewhere to say all this just for provocation. It doesn't sound real to me. But to come back to what is the real problem in Canada. The real problem in Canada is that, like it was in the UK some years ago, their healthcare system is collapsing. Therefore, a Canadian citizen, let's say, that he thinks that he's got a serious illness, and his doctor in the clinic will draw up a list of tests for him, for which he needs an appointment with a specialist in a Canadian hospital. That waiting list can go up to 1 year, by which time he could be dead. That's the real problem they have. And everybody cannot afford to fly to India for treatment. The second issue is that there are Canadian citizens of different origin, not just Indians, whose elderly parents are with them, and whose elderly parents sometimes fall sick in Canada. But I can tell you that I know of 2 cases where the elderly parents fell sick, and the very next day, because he's a friend of mine, he flew back to India and got himself checked into Max Saket, because he told me, अगर मुझे वहाँ रहना है तो मैं तो 2 दिन में मर ही जाता, क्योंकि वहाँ पर लोग कह रहे हैं कि 6 महीने लगेंगे स्पेशलिस्ट को मिलने के लिए. Here, he came here, he was met in an ambulance, Max Saket ambulance. They took him straight into the ICU. He needed emergency surgery. They did the surgery. He was in hospital for a week. He was home. He was fine. Then he said, I'm never going to Canada again, because their health care is such that even if you are fully covered, there's no guarantee that you will recover from a serious illness, because the time that it takes to meet the specialist could be the actual time that you have left to cure your illness. So the problem lies within Canada. It's not caused by India or immigrants. And that is precisely why they are now cutting back on immigration, because they don't have enough affordable health care for their own citizens. They don't have affordable housing. As Sumit rightly pointed out, their economy is in shambles. And therefore, in such situations, it's always nice to find a scapegoat. And when the Indo-Canada bilateral relationship is at its worst ever, I call it gutted. It's really gutted. Pick on the Indians. They think that we are from this poor little country which is so poor, so marginalized, we have nothing to give our citizens, we are dying to go to Canada. They forget one very important thing, Beneath, which I will never forget, which is that most Indians don't like to live in a very cold country which does not see the sun for six months in a year. What is the highest suicide rate in the world, Beneath? It is Iceland. Why? Because they get to see the sun 3 months in the year. Most Indians, if they had a choice, they would never go to Canada or to Nordic countries or to Iceland, because we come from warm countries, we are used to the sun, our DNA is sunshine based, we don't want to go there. And when we go there, many Indians, they get depression and they come back. So I think this man, as rightly pointed out, he needs to smell good South Indian coffee and wake up. That's what I would tell him.
All right. Would like to thank everyone who in fact joined us at a short notice and spoke about this important issue.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.